we at the Public Library are very excited today to offer storytelling by Elizabeth Ballinger. She has 3 or 4 books, and she's going to be telling stories from several of them. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Well, my first book was Prairie Stories. I went to a school that had rattlesnakes in the lockers because it was out on the prairie, and I thought that was pretty neat. Do you have rattlesnakes at your school?
No.
No.
Well, rattlesnakes make life pretty interesting. And I liked the prairie, and I used to go out for walks and look at the colors and all the animals. And I liked it so much I started writing stories about it. So that was my first book. And after Prairie Stories, this is Prairie Stories, then I wrote a book about a magic bird and a boy who wanted to be a clown when he grew up. That one's a true story. He really did become a clown. My first story is a prairie story. This is about an Indian boy, a little Chippewa Indian boy. He wanted to be an artist when he grew up. This is called The Spirit of Little Feather. Now, Little Feather wanted to be an artist, but he didn't have anything to draw on or anything to write with. So he went to the dump. And when he would go to the dump, he would look through, and every once in a while, he would find a marker, and sometimes it was still juicy, and he would put it in his pouch at the side of his waist and tie it tight. And sometimes he would take brown paper bags and smooth them out as smooth as doeskin, fold them up, and put them in his pouch. Well, one day when he was looking through, he saw a blue marker, and he took out the blue marker, and all of a sudden a shot rang out. Ding! Oh, wow. Little Feather turned around, and there was the man who ran the dump. And he had this great big fat belly. He was carrying a rifle across his belly, walking out there. And he said, "Hey, little kid, what you doing in the dump?" Well, that scared Little Feather, what with him carrying a gun in him. Little Feather said, "I'm going to be an artist when I grow up. I'm just looking for paper." And he started to raise his gun and he said, "You ain't going to be no artist. You're nothing but a little Indian kid." Well, that made Little Feather mad. He was going to say something, but just then, when the guy raised the gun, he took off like a shot. Fast as a deer he ran, out of the dump, up the top of the hill, down the bottom of the hill. And there was his reservation, and all the wonderful houses and all his family. And he ran down there, and there was Grandfather sitting on the porch, rocking in his chair. And Grandfather said, "Now, Little Feather, you haven't been to the dump again, have you?" Oh, Little Feather didn't want to say that he had something in his pouch. So he went inside. He had bunk beds. You guys have bunk beds at home? You do? Little Feather was on the top bunk. So he went up to the top bunk, and he took out his marker and brown paper, and he hid it underneath the mattress so that nobody would see, because his parents wanted him to go do his chores. Oh, when he was done, he went out and did his chores. Sure enough, he did everything he was supposed to. But then night came, and he went back, and he climbed up to the top bunk. He should have gone to sleep, but instead, he looked out the window because there was a moon coming up, and the moon was bright and yellow, and it cast a shadow over on the wall from the bare branches that were outside the window. And Little Feather watched the shadow moving on the wall, and when he looked, he saw the tentacles of a great campfire dancing on the wall. Oh, thought Little Feather, it needs warriors. Oh, he thought, he did have his marker underneath his mattress. He pulled it out, and he began to draw the campfire. And pretty soon there were warriors dancing around the campfire. And the warriors had great shields and lances that they were carrying. And Little Feather drew a great being with outstretched arms that would protect the dancers. And then the door opened. It was Mother and Father. Oh, they weren't happy. "Little Feather," they said, "you will not draw on the wall. Give me the markers." Oh, that was the saddest thing for Little Feather. He handed over the markers, and he jumped down off his bed, and he said, "Oh, I'll try and be good. I really will." Well, he was good all summer. You know, it was the end of the summer. It was time to go to school. And Little Feather went to school, but it was a big white school. And it had white walls and white ceilings, and even the teacher had this big knot of white hair up on top of her head. But when Little Feather got to his desk, there on his desk was something he'd never seen before. A pencil with an eraser. Oh, how beautiful and clean and crisp it looked. And he looked at his desk, and he started to draw ivy and rabbits and a jackrabbit running away and an eagle coming down to get the jackrabbit. And pretty soon, down came the ruler on Little Feather's desk, and the teacher said, "Little Feather, you will not draw on your desk. You will stay after school today and draw 100 times on the board. I will not draw on my desk." "Oh," said Little Feather, "I'll try and be good. I really will." Well, he did stay after school, and he did all that writing, although he didn't like it very much. But he was good. Do you know, a whole year went by, and he was good and didn't write on the wall and didn't go to the dump? Well, he still had the marker hidden under his mattress from before. And so he hid that in his pouch, even though he was good. But something happened. Mother came home from the hospital with a brand new baby girl. Oh, she was beautiful. She had black eyes and black hair, and she was smiling, and Mother put her into the crib, and Little Feather went in and looked at her. Oh, she was so beautiful. He still had his marker in his pouch, and when he looked at her and Mother left the room, he took out his marker and drew a diamond around her necklace, and oh, it looked quite nice. And then he drew a diamond on her belly button. It must have felt tickly because she kind of moved her little fingers and toes, and Little Feather drew a diamond on her forehead. The door opened. It was Mother. "Oh," said Mother, "you will not draw on your baby sister, Little Feather. Go to your room." Oh, Little Feather was sad. He knew he should have been good. He wanted to be good, but he wanted to be an artist so badly. Well, he went out to the porch, and he sat down, and there was Grandfather rocking in his chair. "Now, Little Feather," said Grandfather, "you know you were named after a feather, which after all was the first thing that made the most beautiful drawings from long ago." Oh, Little Feather liked that. "And besides," said Grandfather, "you are an artist." Little Feather stood up. He thought about that. Yeah, he was an artist. He was already an artist. Oh, it would be easy to be good now. Why, 2 years went by and Little Feather grew and grew. But then something happened that changed all that. A great big truck arrived and pulled right up in front of Little Feather's house. And a big man wheeling a cart came down the ramp, pushing a big box into Little Feather's house. And he set it down, and he ripped the cardboard from around the refrigerator. The first refrigerator the tribe had ever seen. It was big and square and white and shiny. Oh, everybody came, and they danced around the refrigerator and sang songs to celebrate the coming of the great refrigerator. Oh, how beautiful it was. And when they were singing, they went outside and lit a great campfire to celebrate the refrigerator. And they were dancing and singing. Little Feather looked at that refrigerator, kind of called to him. He took out his marker. Oh, just a little prairie grass at the bottom, he thought. He drew in some prairie grass. All of a sudden in his mind, the prairie appeared on the door, and he drew a great sun coming down onto the prairie, and when the sun hit the prairie grass, it set the prairie grass on fire, and the fire spread across the refrigerator door, and antelope were running, and eagles were flying, and jackrabbits were fleeing their hole. He got to the end of the door, so he went around the other side, and he drew wild horses, and their manes and tails were blowing in the wind. Oh, what a drawing! The door opened. It was Mother and Father. "Oh," said Little Feather, "you will not draw on our new refrigerator." And they gave Little Feather a rag, and Little Feather had to wipe the drawing. And as he watched it disappear, it was sad to him to see his drawing go away like that. And he went out on the porch, and the Grandfather said, "Now, Little Feather, I'm going to get you paper and markers from now on. You're not going to make any more mistakes. Please, Little Feather, promise." Little Feather was so silent, he could not say a word. He was too sad. And Little Feather grew and grew and grew to be a young man. Why? It was time for Little Feather to go away to school. Far away. He wouldn't see his family for a long time. And he came downstairs to say goodbye. And when he did, there was Father, sleeping on the couch in the living room. Little Feather didn't want to wake him up, and he stepped into the living room. And then he watched his father's bare belly rising and falling. Oh, thought Little Feather. He still had his pouch. He got down on his hands and knees, crawled across the living room floor to where Father was sleeping. And there, by the side of his father, he imagined the beef chart in his father's large, bare belly. He began to draw in the dotted lines of the beef chart, and the beef chart began to breathe. And Little Feather carefully wrote the words, loin, shoulder, and when he went to write the words, rib, Little Feather's father began to wake up, and so Little Feather ran. Out he went to the front porch, and he was just going to run off the porch when Grandfather said, "Oh, Little Feather, you haven't been doing something you're not supposed to, have you?" Little Feather stopped to say, "It's the last time, I promise." And that's the end of The Spirit of Little Feather. I'd like to see a picture. The artist is a Cherokee Indian. She was a visiting artist at the school where I was teaching in San Cooley, Montana, Centerville School. And when she heard me telling my stories, she decided she'd like to try and do some of the drawings. And at the time I thought, well, I'll never get them published, you know. You don't think something like that will ever happen to you. But a year later, I did have a chance to get them published, and she had done the drawings, and so she became the artist. And her name is Paula Ottenbright. And that's the story of Little Feather, and here's a picture of him. What is he doing? You tell me. What is he doing? Drawing on his dad's belly. I don't recommend that. You might not want to try that.
That's good.
Okay, the next story is Magic Bird. And instead of reading to you from Magic Bird, I'm going to tell the story with Paula Ottenbright's drawing. Now, this is the story of a little girl named Leah. And Leah believes that she lived on a magical island. She didn't like to think of herself as the only daughter of a poor widow who lived in a shack. She liked to pretend she was Princess Arubia of a magical island. And she would wrap herself in the sheets and pretend that if she could only talk to the High Queen of the island, she too would rule the wind and the waves. But every day, Leah's mother, Rosa, would call her to time to go to the marketplace where her mama would sell her paintings that she did, and Leah would go to the beaches to dig for clams, because that was her job. That's how they managed to have enough to eat, was from selling her clams. And Mama would squash her hat down on Leah's head and say, "Now you don't want to be a crusty old crab like your mama. You got to wear your hat." And they loved each other so much. And Leah would carry all of Mama's paintings under her arm, and they would go to the marketplace. Now, on the way, down by the docks, there was an old storyteller named Alan Allen. And if Leah was lucky, Mama would let her sit and listen to one of the stories. Why, her very favorite story of all was the one of the magic bird. But this day they were late, and she had to run on to the beach. And when she got to the beach, Leah didn't want to work and dig for clams. Do you know, it's very hard. You have to look at the sand, because in the sand there's holes. And the holes that come up where the bubbles coming up out of the holes are where the clams are. And you put your toe in there and you lift up the clams with your toe. But if you put your toes into the holes with no bubbles coming up, there can be sandworms in there, and sandworms bite. You don't have them here in Missoula. But Leah didn't like sandworms. Well, when she got to the beach, Leah didn't want to dig clams. She didn't want to do any work. She wanted to ride her imaginary horse across the sand and pretend that she was the princess in search of the High Queen and that she had the clams as her secret spies. But when she decided it was time to work, she put her toe in the wrong hole and a worm bit her on the end of a toe. And Leah jumped around in a circle and said, "I hate clamming, I hate sandworms, and I hate working." And she pulled the sandworm off of her toe and threw it into the ocean and cried and pouted and took her 5 clams that she'd found down to the marketplace, which was barely enough to make $1. Well, when she was down there, there was the old fisherman, Seabird, and they were gathering to listen to one of Alan Allen's stories. Oh, thought Leah, maybe I'll feel better if I listen to a story. And he was telling the story of the magic bird. The old man said, "There was a little boy who saw the magic bird once." And Leah interrupted, "Oh, Alan, do you think I could see the magic bird?" "Shh," he said, "I'll tell you the story. There was a little boy who did see the magic bird once. Did you know that you'll have luck for the rest of your life if you see the solid white, beautiful magic bird?" "Oh," thought Leah, she interrupted again, "I want to see the magic bird. I want to have luck for the rest of my life. I would buy a bicycle and find enough clams to eat for a month." "Well," Alan Allen said, "this little boy worked on a whaling ship, and he was scrubbing the decks. As a matter of fact, they called him Suds, because he got all soapy all the time from scrubbing the decks. And he saw the bird, and he was so excited he fell right on his keister in the soap and the slime, and he scrambled up and said, 'Oh, the magic bird, oh, magic bird, I wish to be the captain of my own whaling ship.'" "And did he?" Leah interrupted again. "Shh," said Alan Allen, "I didn't finish." And he told her the story of how, yes, he did. He became Captain Suds. Maybe you've heard of him. And then, when he finished the story, Leah heard a sound. "Ee! Ee!" And she looked at the end of the dock, and there, at the end of the dock, was a group of birds flying off the wake of a boat. And right in the middle was a snow-white bird. "There it is," said Leah. "I see it. It's a snow-white gull. I've never seen a snow-white gull. Oh, it must be the magic bird. Oh, magic bird," said Leah. I wish that I would find so many clams today that I would have enough money to eat for a month." And the birds disappeared into the fog. And when she looked back at Alan Allen, his eyes were sparkling. Oh, Leah was so excited. She ran down to the beach. She took off her hat and her sandals and her coat and her scarf and ran across the beach saying, "I am Princess Arubia of this magical island. I have seen the magic bird, and I shall have luck for the rest of my life." And she began to work very hard digging for clams. And when she did, all of a sudden she noticed it was high tide again already. She had worked for hours and hours, almost the whole day. And she could barely carry the box. She had so many clams in them. And she hadn't been bitten by one sandworm. Well, when she took all the clams back to the marketplace, she had so much money she could barely hold it in her hand, which she kept in her pocket to keep it hidden. And she knew she'd have enough for a bicycle and lots of food. But she went back to Alan Allen, the old storyteller, and he was sitting there on a log at the dock. And Leah said, "Oh, Alan, was it the magic bird that I had all that luck?" And his eyes sparkled, and he took his pipe from his mouth and set it down, and he said, "Leah, you've been given a gift from the magic bird. The magic's inside your heart. And it was all that magic that made you find all those clams today. But you get to keep that magic for the rest of your life. And the magic's in the wind and the waves and the streets of town. You'll never lose it now." Leah was so excited. She gave him a big hug. She ran up the dock to get her mama. And after she got her bicycle, she rode all the way to the end of the island. And she spread out her arms and said, "I am Princess Arubia of this magical island, and I shall rule the wind of the waves and be friend of the magic bird forever." And that's the end of the story. Well, do you like fairy tales?
Yeah.
Yes? I like fairy tales. Matter of fact, I've written a whole book of fairy tales, even though it hasn't been published yet. But I do have a fairy tale in Prairie Stories. This is a prairie story that takes place down near Mexico, and it's called Isabella's Magic Wall. Here's a picture of the magic wall. Once upon a time, in a village edge of Mexico called Cananea, there lived a beautiful young girl named Isabella. Now this was a problem. Oh, you wouldn't think it was a problem being beautiful, but everybody wanted to marry Isabella. Well, said Papa, I will go down into the village and find a young man who is handsome and creative and intelligent that will take good care of our olive trees should he marry Isabella. And so he put down his mochila, his backpack, and his manta, his blanket over his shoulders, and he went down into the village. Oh, he talked to young boys and fast boys and skinny boys, all kinds of boys. But none of them pleased the old man. And he was walking back up to his hacienda on the hill where the olive trees were. And when he was there, an old woman came walking by. She fascinated him. So he stopped to talk to her. And when he did, she pulled some powder out of her waist. She said, I have something for you to sprinkle over the wall outside Isabella's balcony. And if you sprinkle this on the wall, only a man who is intelligent and creative and handsome and strong will be able to master this magic wall. Oh, he thought. And he put it in his coat, and then he was thinking, well, how did she know about my Isabella and the wall? And when he turned around, she was gone. My, he thought. Well, a young man named Tomas had been following the old man because he wanted to marry Isabella, and Tomas heard all about it. So he said, I'm going to hide behind the old man all the way up to the hacienda. I will be strong and intelligent enough to master the magic wall. Well, when the old man got to the hacienda, he went up to Isabella's balcony and sprinkled the powder. He looked at the wall. It didn't look any different. Ah, he thought. He went back inside. But Tomas, he watched. He waited until it was dark. And when it was dark, he looked at the wall and he thought, I can get over that wall. And so he stepped up to the wall. But when he touched the wall, poof, he turned into an hormiguita. Can you say that? Hormiguita, a little tiny ant. And he was scurrying up the wall. Oh, said Tomas, I'm an ant. I can make it. I'll climb up the wall right up to Isabella's balcony. Isn't this wonderful? But along came a wind. Can you make the sound like a wind? Blew the little ant, which was Tomas, off the wall. Oh, said Tomas, down to the ground. And when he hit the ground, he turned back into Tomas. Oh, said Tomas, I should have learned patience, but I'm ready now. Tomas crept up to the wall and placed his hands on the wall, and poof, he turned into a rata. Can you say that? Rata. A rat. And when he was climbing up the wall, he thought, oh, good, this time I'm a rat. The wind won't blow me off this time. And he got up to the top of the wall. Can you make the sound of the wind? Tomas was ready. He bit into a vine really hard. But what he didn't realize was he was holding on to the wrong side of the vine, and when he bit it in, he bit it right off. Oh, said Tomas, back down to the ground. And when he touched the ground, he turned back into Tomas. Oh, said Tomas, I have learned patience as an hormiguita, and I have learned that I should have planned ahead as a rata. This time, Tomas said, this is the one. I'm going to touch the wall, and I'm going to make it. And he went up, brave as he was, and touched the wall. Poof, turned into a buitre. Can you say it? Buitre, a vulture. Oh, said Tomas, look at me. I'm a vulture. I will fly right over the balcony. And he did. And when he sat down on the balcony, there he was, fanning his beautiful wings, and out came the beautiful Isabella and looked at the vulture. And Tomas wanted to open his mouth to say, will you marry me? But when he did, all that came out was, And Isabella took a big broom and she smacked Tomas as hard as she could. Whack! Oh, said Tomas. Down to the ground he went. And he turned back into a real boy. And Isabella never saw him. Oh, said Tomas, I have learned patience, and I have learned to plan ahead, and now as a buitre, I have learned that people only see what is in front of them. I think that I should go up to the olive trees, and I think I will stay in there all night and think about this to come up with a solution. And so that night, he thought, and he thought, and he thought, and he ate lots of olives. And while he was thinking, he noticed that some of the olives were a little bit amargo. Can you say that? Amargo. Means a little bit bitter. Oh, he thought, if I would divert the water, yes, just the thing. He was ready. When the sun came up and lit onto Isabella's balcony, Isabella came out. Tomas had an escalator ready, a ladder, and he pushed the escalator over to the balcony. Woo! And when he did, it hit the balcony, and Tomas landed right at Isabella's feet. And he said, "Will you marry me?" And Isabella was scared. You know what she said? Oh! She didn't know what to say. Out came Mama and Papa to see why Isabella was screaming. And there was Tomas at her feet. "What are you doing here?" they said. Tomas stood up. "Senor," he said, "I have noticed that your olives are a little bit amargo." See that? Amargo. A little bit bitter. And if you would divert the water a certain way, it would change that. Oh, Papa was impressed how intelligent this young man was. "And besides," said Tomas, "I want to marry Isabella." "Well," said Papa, "it's okay with me, but it's up to her." And so Isabella came over and took Tomas's hands and walked to the edge of the balcony. And when she did, they looked out over all the olive trees, and she said, "Sí," which means yes, and the magic wall disappeared. And that's the end of Isabella's magic wall. Okay, now you have to be coyotes. Can you be coyotes? Oh, very good. Let's hear. Can you be coyotes? Oh. All right. One more story, then I'll tell you a little bit about being a writer. This is a story called Jumps at the Moon. I got this idea one night because my little cow dog went out and tried to jump at the moon. So then I got this story. Oh, another coyote over there. Okay. Down in the deep den of a coyote were 3 coyote puppies. Littlest coyote, sister coyote, and brother coyote. Well, when the moon came up, it cast a beautiful light into the den, and littlest coyote couldn't resist. He crawled up out to the opening, and he looked around, and there in the sky was a large yellow ball. And he thought, "Oh, I must have it." So he wiggled his rear end like that, and he jumped, ouch! But he couldn't catch that yellow ball. What was that thing? What was it up in the sky?
Oh,
The moon. Can you touch the moon?
no.
Well, littlest coyote didn't understand that. So he thought he'll do it this time, and he wiggled harder, and he jumped, out! But he couldn't catch that moon. And then Father's white teeth flashed in the moonlight and grabbed him, and he said, "You are a foolish coyote. I will name you a name so everybody will know how foolish you are. I shall name you Jumps at the Moon." Well, up came Mother and Brother and Sister Coyote, and so all the coyotes of the coulee would hear, they had to have a good howl. Now it's your turn. And all the coyotes heard how foolish he was. Well, 2 weeks passed, and it was time for Sister Coyote to earn her name. So she crept out of the den, down the rocks of the ravine, crossed the coulee, and sniffed. Can you sniff? And she smelled rabbit. Oh, just the thing. And when she got to the farm, she crept along the path to the farm, and she saw that the rabbit was in a box. How strange, thought Sister Coyote. But coyotes are very clever, and she figured out how to do it. And when she was ready, she jumped on top of the box and swung up the ledge and reached inside and grabbed a rabbit with her teeth and ran all the way back to the farm. put the rabbit down. Up came Father and Mother and jumps at the moon. And they looked at the rabbit. "Oh," said Father Coyote, "my most intelligent daughter, what a fine thing you have brought the family to eat. I shall name you a grand name. I shall name you Unlatch Hutchmuch." Oh, with such a proud name, they had to tell all the coyotes of the coulee. And all the coyotes heard about Unlatch Hutchmuch and her wonderful name. 3 more weeks went by, and it was time for Brother Coyote to earn his name. He crept out of the opening of the den, down the rocks of the ravine, across the coulee, past the farm, and he sniffed, and he smelled garbage. Mmm, good stuff. And when he got to the dump, he ate some of that very fine garbage. Then he heard a sound. What was that? Chickens? Won't Father be proud if I bring him a chicken? And so he crept through the sagebrush up to where the chickens were. And when he got there, he saw a little bit of an opening underneath the fence. And when he was ready, he made his move, and he dashed underneath the fence, and he grabbed a chicken and broke its neck, and back underneath the fence, and he ran across the rocks of the ravine, the farm, up the coulee, up into the den. And he put the chicken down. Out came Father and Mother, and they looked at the coyote's prize, the chicken. "Oh," said Father Coyote, "what a wonderful thing you have brought the family to eat. I shall name you a grand name. Let me see. I shall call you Breaks Neck Fast." Oh, with such a proud name, they had to let all the coyotes know. Out loud. Right. All the coyotes heard about Breaks Neck Fast. And then Mother said, "I think it's time that the coyotes go out on their own. Come on in." And you know, mothers usually get their way. So the coyote puppies went 3 separate directions. Breaks Neck Fast went to where the chickens were at the dump. Unlatch Hutchmuch went to the farm. And poor little Jumps at the Moon, the only place left was across the endless prairie where no coyote had ever survived. Oh, it was a cold winter. Ooh, can it be cold? Ooh, 40 degrees below zero, like Missoula sometimes. And a wind was blowing. And then spring came, and Mama had more puppies come in. But she said, "I think we should go and look for our children." No, thought Father. But Mother got her way. Off they went. First place they went was the farm to look for Unlatch Hutchmuch. And they crept up there, and they saw the rabbits in the box. But they didn't see any coyotes anywhere. And then the rabbit snapped its big back legs down on the hutch. And when it did, it scared Mother, and she looked up, and there on the side of the barn was a coyote spread like that. "Oh, my poor baby," said Mother Coyote. "What could have happened to Unlatch Hutchmuch?" Oh, roar, roar, roar. They were so sad. They went back to the den, and they had to tell all the coyotes. This time it's a sad cry. It can be sad. Oh, roar, roar, roar. And all the coyotes heard what happened to Unlatch Hutchmuch. "Well," said Father, "my intelligent son surely survived the winter at the dump. So we'll go and look for our son, Breaks Neck Fast." And they traveled all day to the dump. And when they got there, they sniffed. He sniffed. And they heard that sound, chickens. Can you make a chicken sound? The chickens were still there. And so they crept through the sagebrush. And when they got near the chickens, they heard the rattle of a chain. Father and Mother, what was that? And up came the ears of a coyote and a bushy tail, and there at the end of the chain was Breaks Neck Fast. Thought Father, no, not the worst thing that could happen to a coyote. You haven't been domesticated, have you? "I'm the guard dog," said Breaks Neck Fast. "And if you don't go away from here, I'll bark." "Oh no," said Father, "don't bark. Coyotes don't bark." Oh no. He was so sad. They ran as fast as they could all the way back to the den. What did they do with the den? Oh! Sad cry. There was one coyote left. Who was it? Jumps at the moon. Mother said, "We should go across the endless prairie and look for Jumps at the moon, Father." "Oh, I don't think so," said Father. "But you know, mothers always get their way." And so off across the endless prairie they went. Over the hills, down into the coulees for 2 weeks until Mama's belly was getting pretty big and she couldn't move too well. But Father said, "One more night, Mama. We'll go up to the top of that hill. And if we don't see any sign of Jumps at the moon, I'll take you home." And that night, there was a full moon coming up again. Up over the prairie hills, a beautiful prairie moon. And they crept up to the top of the hill. And Mama Coyote was right behind Father Coyote. And he got all bristly, and his ears came up, and his fur got straight, and his tail got all puffy, and Mama thought maybe he was seeing a mountain lion, and she cuddled up next to him to see what it was he was looking at. There, on a faraway ridge, under the light of the moon, was a beautiful silver coyote. And he was dancing around, and by his side was a young female coyote, and she was yipping and swishing her tail. Oh, Mother and Father were happy. They sat down on that ridge to watch their son dance and jump at the moon. And that's the end of Jumps at the Moon. Thank you. Now, everyone here has a chance for 3 door prizes. I can give away 3 of the first edition of Prairie Stories. It's not the same cover as this one, but it's the same book. So you're going to be given a number. Hang on to your number when this person walks around, and then we'll call out 3 numbers, and 3 people will get a Prairie Story. And while she's doing that, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about being a writer. If any of you are interested in being a writer, you can start right now. Are you? Okay. I think one of the most important things to do is to keep writing. And what I do is I carry this with me, and sometimes I make silly little drawings. I'm not a very good artist. But I write, and write poetry, or write what happened to me today. Just write anything. So you can pass that around and look at it. That's a journal. And I keep one by my bed, and one in my purse that I carry around everywhere, and one in my school bag because I'm a teacher. So anytime a thought comes to me, I can write it down. That's one thing you can do. Another thing that I think helps being a writer is to enjoy stories, which you're already doing. You read books, and you learn some at school and some at home. And what I do is I put my stories that I like on index cards so that I can learn them by heart. And when you learn them by heart, they become a part of you, and you can tell them to other people. Now, I'm a storyteller and a writer, but you can be a storyteller just by telling stories that you've either written or that you really like. Like, you know the 3 Little Bears? Could you tell that story? You know it pretty well, right? Okay, we'll see now you could be a storyteller. But this is another way that you can learn stories to tell them. So you need to write, and you need to read, because all the stories you learn will help you to be a writer. And I brought one more little show and tell. This is something that's very exciting for me. This is called a galley. Now, when you get to be a writer, if you ever get a book published, it goes to a publisher, and the publisher gets to pick the cover that they want and the illustrator and things like that. But one day in the mail, you get a box. And when you open up the box, there's your story that you wrote, all printed out on pages. And this is going to be my first adult fiction. This is a more for a grown-up book, and it's called Am I the Only One Who's Crazy? So you have to read the book and find out. So this is called a galley. A galley means a mock-up or a practice, like a rough draft of the book that's going to be in print. So if you want to look at that later, you can. Do you have questions about being writers? Any of you have questions? Okay, well, keep writing and keep reading. That's the best way to do it. Are we ready? Let me get 3 books.
These numbers are really long, so I think we'll just read off the last 2, because I think they all start with 9953. So don't even pay attention to that part. Just listen to the last 2 numbers.
Okay. I'll hold the hat and you draw.
I grab, huh? Okay, the first number is 12. 1, 2. Is that you?
Oh, come on up
Got
here
a
and get a
winner.
book.
We're gonna get a book.
Here you go. That's for you. What's your name? Oh, congratulations. Okay, here's the second one. Now I'll sign these for you later, okay? I have a pen and I'll write you a little
19.
message. 19?
I also see 110.
All right. One more.
One more. And the last number is 13.
13?
Is that you?
Why don't you pull another one? That's not fair.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I don't know why I got 2 so close to each other. 15. Stuck at the beginning part there. Is that you? Okay.
Oh,
She's
here you
got
go.
your book.
Okay, I'll sign them for you later. Now, Barbara from Fact and Fiction is over here, and she has my book, my dog training book. That was the first book that I wrote, a book on dog training, and that one's, I think, $5. And then there's the Prairie Stories, and Magic Bird, and To Be a Clown. And if you're interested in any of them, I'd be happy to write notes in the front and sign them. So I'll take a little break and sign these, and then I have one more story called The Pea Little Frigs, if you'd like to hear it. You know what spoonerisms are?
Yes.
It's where all the words get mixed up. Well, this is the story of the Pea Little Frigs instead of the 3 Little Pigs. So there really was a man named Spooner, and Spooner had a speech problem. When Spooner would talk, he'd mix up his words. Like if your name was Sally Jones, they'd call you Jolly Sones. So when this man told stories, everybody would laugh. So this is the story of the Pea Little Frigs. Back in the happy days, when there was no scarcity of hams, and pork nicks were a chapel apiece, there lived an old Prairie lake and her sea runs. Whatever happened to the mate's old pan? I still miss wood of summer. Well, one year the acorn fought quailed, and poor old Prairie Lake was having one teck of a hind young in her feedsters. So she bowled her 3 toys. They'd have to go out and feed their own sorchins. See how the words are twisted? Okay, I'll try and help you with it. But, yes.
Afterwards, can you tell the story right?
Uh-oh. I don't know if I can.
Try it.
Okay. Let's see what happened to the purse little fig, shall we? Now the purse little fig, his name was Turlykale. Now Turlykale was on the road, and he enamored a nice-looking count who was carrying a bundle of yellow baw. You know what yellow baw is? Straw. To hild a little bouse.
How?
Right. And he said, "Oh, me's plister, couldn't I have some of that yellow baw to hild me a little bouse?" The man was jig-hearted, and willingly gave his wandle for the pappy little hig to cock his biltage. But no sooner was the house finished than along came the wearable tooth. What's that? The terrible woof. Only see it's twisted. The wearable tooth. And he said in his Venner toys, "Piddle-ling, piddle-ling. Let me come in and he your city prum. Though, 1,000 times though, not by the hin of my chair. So the wolf said, "I'll duck, and I'll wuff, and I'll hoe your blouse down." After that, the wolf chucked up his peaks and blew the smith to houserines. After which he had a dine finner of roast sow and piggy kraut. What a pignanimous end for such a peat little swig. But let's see what happened to the peckin' little sig. Now the peckin' little sig, his name was Spotty. And Spotty was also on the road and came across a man carrying a bundle of shreen grubbery.
Sticks.
Right, some green shrubberies. I can't even say it right now. And he said to the man, "Oh, me's plister, couldn't I bum some of that shrubbery off of you to hild me a little bouse?" And the man said, "Obey with me, Kiggy. Sure will be a load off my shoulders." And with that, he banded the hundle to the pappy little hig, who caught his spiltage. But then there was a sharp dap in the nor, and he heard in a by voice, "Piddle-lig, piddle-lig! Hello, little piggy, I'm a Wendley Fruff." And Piddle-lig said, "No, no, you can't come in." And the wolf said, "Then I'll wuff, and I'll duff, and I'll hoe your douse blown." And with that, the wolf took reveral deep cess until his ugly face was a creep dimsum, and he shimsy house became a flambles. After which, he had a dine finner of roast sound piggy kraut. Oh dear. Well, let's see what happened to the third little pig. Now, piggy number 3, otherwise known as Thiggy number Pre, was also on the road, and he came across a man driving a horse and huggy, pulling a load of bricks. "Oh," said Piggy, "how about braiding me some of those hicks for this shundle of laundry I'm sharing over my coulders?" He had a bundle of laundry he's carrying on his shoulder. And the man said, "Death and newin', but I'll give you the hicks. I'll give you the bricks." See, he had bricks in his buggy. And he dumped his ruggy onto the boat, said "Gadors" to his app, and drove awfully cheered. Well, no sooner had Piggy number 3 finished building his cream dassel and settled into his cheesy air, his easy chair, when there came a sharp dap at the door. And somebody in a by hoist said, "Piddle-lig, piddle-lig, swing pied your whortles and well me bidcome." "No, no," said Piddle-lig, "and furthermore, my fine furry fiend, you'll not hoe this blouse down, 'cause it's constricted of brucks." "Constructed of bricks? Well, Wolford the Ant, then I'll yump in through your jundo." Where's he gonna come in? Through the... Not yet. Yump in through your jundo. "No, no, my stindo is also one." Couldn't come in through the window 'cause it was stuck. "Why don't you chime down my chimney?" Right. He rhymed up onto the cloop, chimed down the chimney, right into a wat of boiling water. Water. For the next wee threeks, the pappy little hig had wolf rare spibs, wolf lenderstoin, wolf sow and feeder kraut, and hot wolf roll on a burger, all with puckle and mister. That's the end of the P Little Frigs. Well, I could do one more. Some of you need to go. That's okay. I'll do one more. Let's see. I'll do a prairie story. How about a story of a brave little dog and a jackrabbit? Okay, this is the story of No-Nose. Now, once upon a time on the farm, there were 5 little cow dogs born, and they were under the bunkhouse porch. And along came Rory Lyman, and he heard 'em a whimpering. Well, he reached under there and pulled out 4 little cow dogs and put them in his shirt, because he's afraid the coyotes would get them, and he carried them off to the barn and put them away. Well, there was still 1 little cow dog under the porch. And when it was dark, that little cow dog was cold, and he come a-scuttling out from under that porch, and he looked around, and there weren't nobody around, so he gave a little cow dog cry. When he did that, something up in the sky heard him. Eee! It was a great golden eagle, and he saw the little cow dog, and he was going to come right down there and snatch it up. But out in the sagebrush was big old bent ear, the jackrabbit, had 1 ear like that and 1 busted ear that kind of hung off to the side like that. And old bent ear, he said, "I'm not going to let that eagle get that little puppy. I'll just hop over there and save his life." So he hopped over to where the puppy was, and he picked him up in his 2 big front teeth like that, snatched the puppy up, and went over to the porch. And when he got to the porch, he set the puppy down. He said, "You are the ugliest little thing I've ever seen. What happened to your nose?" Well, it just so happens that little puppy had a pink nose. Why, it looked like his tongue was stuck to the end of his nose, because he didn't have no black nose there. "My, you are ugly," he thought. But to save this puppy's life, old Ben Deer got down there with his 2 big front teeth and hopped up the steps. 1, 2, 3, right up on the front porch, and set that puppy down on the front porch. And the screen door opened, and so Ben Deer took off. And the screen door opened, and out came Mrs. Lyman, and she saw the puppy. "Oh my goodness," she said, "you poor little thing." And she picked up the puppy and took it out to the barn with the other little puppies. Well, that puppy grew to be the best farm dog they'd ever had. Why, it was a strapping 35 pounds. Old No-Nose could herd the chickens and herd the cows. Even old Chamberlain, the farm cat, why, he could herd anything. So they decided to keep him. And time went by, and old No-Nose grew. Why, one day, he was out there sniffing around in the sagebrush, and he saw this big old white tail of a rabbit. And he sniffed, and he thought, well, he'd like to chase that rabbit. That's what dogs do. So he began to bark. Woo, 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 woo. He began to chase that rabbit, and when he did, up came one ear like that, and up came a busted ear like that. Well, who was it? Oh, Ben Deer, the rabbit that had saved his life. But little No-Nose didn't know that. And so he kept chasing No-Nose. No-Nose chased that rabbit, and when he chased it, something else saw the rabbit. A big old eagle that was up in the sky. Eee! And that eagle swooped down and grabbed the rabbit with his talons and flew up, up, up into the cottonwood tree and dropped the rabbit in its nest. Oh my goodness, that poor rabbit. His sides was aching, and No-Nose ran to the bottom of the cottonwood tree. Roar, 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 roar. And when he did, No-Nose stayed there and barked until that eagle got mad and flew off.
Hi, Michael.
And he looked up at the tree, and here come one ear like that, and one busted ear. And Ben Deer looked over the edge of the tree down at the puppy that was barking at him and said, "You ugly-looking dog, I remember you. You're the dog with no nose. I'm the rabbit that saved your life." Oh, thought the puppy. "You, sir, the famous rabbit that saved my life? Well, then I'll save your life. You better climb down out of that tree," said No-Nose. "Well," said old Ben Deer, his sides still aching, "you silly dog, don't you know rabbits don't climb trees?" Oh, No-Nose thought a minute. "Well," he said, "you better fly down out of that tree." And Ben Deer looked over, holding his sides, and said, "Rabbits don't fly neither." Well, here come the eagle back to his nest, and No-Nose saw him coming and said, "Jump, Ben Deer!" And so Ben Deer gathered up his aching haunches out of the nest and jumped around through the branches, crash, smash, dead leaves flying in every direction, whack, thud, fire, down to the ground, and the dust was flying. "You're right," said No-Nose, "rabbits don't fly." Well, the eagle landed onto the ground, and it hissed and spread its wings like that and began to hop over to get the rabbit. But No-Nose wouldn't let the eagle have the rabbit, and No-Nose braced himself right over the rabbit. Like that, growled, and the eagle gave up and flew away. But then, when No-Nose looked at the rabbit and saw it was out cold, he knew he had to save the rabbit's life. So he picked the rabbit up in his teeth. He had to hold its head way up here in the air like that, because it was a great big rabbit with big long legs. He carried the rabbit all the way back to the farmhouse. And when he got to the farmhouse, he put it on the porch, and the screen door opened. "Oh, you poor little thing!" It was Mrs. Lyman. She picked up the rabbit and carried it inside and put it on the table and wrapped up all its wounds so it would be all better. But poor Ben Deer was still out cold. "Well," thought Mrs. Lyman, "we'll just put Ben Deer down here by the wood stove and see what happens." And she went to bed. And do you know, the next morning, what she saw when she came down? There, curled up on that blanket, was Ben Deer and No-Nose all snuggled together like a cinnamon twist. Why, they were the best of friends. And that's the end of the story of No-Nose. I'd be happy to stay and answer questions or sign books. And thank you for coming and sharing my stories with me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
What's your name? Neil. Can you spell it for me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you never know.